There are very few war machines in the world of Battletech that carry with them the narrative and on-the-field gravity that the mech in this video does. Made iconic through exterior media, such as the Battletech television show and the Mechwarrior 2 video game, this machine is seemingly built to bring everything to the field. Rightly, it is considered to be one of the greats among the original 16 clan Omnimechs from Technical Readout 3050. And its legacy in the setting, and amongst the player base, will not be shaken. It would be Clan Jade Falcon that would put this overpowering force, one which decimates all which are lighter than it, and strikes fear into the hearts of even the most capable Inner Sphere assault mechs, into the field. In this video, we are going to be examining the mech which looks like a thunderbolt, but is much closer to the god of thunder himself, the Summoner. A clan-heavy Omnimech weighing in at 70 tons, the Summoner is one of the most recognizable clan battlemechs from the clan invasion, and has been bound to the history of Clan Jade Falcon from the very start of its production. Named Thor by the defenders of the Federated Commonwealth when they did not know the clan identification for this unit, the mech bears a striking resemblance to the Inner Sphere's Thunderbolt. First manufactured in 2872 by Clan Jade Falcon, the Summoner's origins don't appear to be what many imagine. First, most would have assumed that Jade Falcon looked at the Thunderbolt and determined it would be a great basis for a clan Omnimech. While this is an entirely reasonable and sincere belief, this is not the origins for the mech which is most affiliated with the Norse thunder god. Instead, the Summoner's origins have a basis not in the venerable war machine of the Inner Sphere, but of a much earlier generation of clan standard mech known as the Thresher. Considered to be a lackluster design in its original form, the Thresher was a Battlemech platform that was developed by Clan Diamond Shark in cooperation with Clan Hell's Horses. It is hard to know the full truth behind this mech's origins, as some would claim it was designed by committee, while others noted that the Thresher was built to be a garrison unit, or had been intended to be more in line with medium mechs rather than other heavies. All the same, the chassis of the Thresher was the main inspiration of the 70-ton Summoner, which would appear within 30 years of launching this largely forgotten mech. The Summoner is almost timeless, seemingly, if only because of its full endorsement of the mobile heavy mech concept which the clans perfected with their advanced technologies. It is fast, maneuverable, well-cooled, and bordering on adequately armored. It also benefits from reasonable amounts of space for weaponry, meaning it is nearly the total package as far as clan platforms are concerned, at least at first glance. This vicious combatant was superb for clan trials in the centuries that followed its development, and would play a role in the Jade Falcon's successes during this time. Pilots that used its strengths would always find success, in other words. The mech itself plays into the Jade Falcon way of war, which is swift and brutal. When the initial invasion broke out, Summoners would be found in all forces that assaulted the Inner Sphere in variable numbers. However, in Clan Jade Falcon, they would have 3 times the average of these machines in use, showing just how much they favored them, both in terms of their industrial output, but also in terms of their warriors' tastes. This lethal machine would be a chariot for many famous pilots, from Aiden Pride at one time, to Quinn Kerensky, to Tyle Malthus, and of course, to the heavily memed Star Colonel Nikolai Malthus, to name just a few. All the same, it is mechs like the Summoner that fundamentally changed the way of war in the Inner Sphere, during and after the clan invasion. Increasingly, heavy mechs became expected to move faster, hit harder, and to be able to reposition more rapidly as a result of mechs like this. It can be seen in Technical Readout 3055, where the Inner Sphere, due to its engineers and pilots, began to turn out huge numbers of new machines, all with larger, faster XL engines for their heavy mechs, trying to keep up with their clan rivals. Things, however, would not stay in the Summoner's favor forever. Into the Dark Age, the mech would finally be retired from full manufacturing by Clan Jade Falcon, who would replace it with the Grand Summoner, a new age upgrade over the original model. Of course, summoners would remain in service with Clan Jade Falcon, and with replacement parts, but no new Battlemechs would be manufactured. This would seemingly be the quiet end to the long history of this legendary mech, to be gradually replaced with time by its newer, more sophisticated successor. Only, this is indeed not the fate of this venerable warrior, as Clan Hell's Horses, in the latter stages of the Dark Age and Ilclan era, would find that the summoner fit their own technological and industrial shortcomings, and was a perfect addition to their own military doctrine involving combined arms and fast strikers. As a consequence, on the world of Svarstad, the Hell's Horses would forge these mighty war machines anew, trading them to others when necessary, or employing them on their own for their powerful armies. This is what ensures that the Summoner would be the longest manufactured clan Omnimech in history. This is what has cemented its rightful place as the wise warrior of the clans. And anyone who underestimates it, simply because its chassis may be dated, should be prepared to embrace an unmitigated disaster. One of the best of its generation, and one of the only long-term survivors of its generation of Omnimechs, the 70-ton Summoner is truly a deadly adversary for anyone who faces it down, regardless of the era or setting. When the Inner Sphere came across it, they dubbed it as the Thor, as mentioned prior. The Summoner does its best to be an optimal mixture of the armored triangle, and does this without using every advanced clan technology as well. To start with, it has 22.5 tons of pod space on board for its available systems. This makes it the least heavily armed of the heavy clan mechs of technical readout 3050. But this is this way because the Summoner focuses on mobility over firepower. All the same, 22.5 tons of pod space is more than enough to install a series of devastating clan tech weapon systems. I need not remind everyone that clan weapons do more damage for less tonnage than their Inner Sphere counterparts. Much like many older clan designs, despite having clan endo steel available, the Thor doesn't take advantage of this, and instead has a standard internal structure. Also, this means, of course, it has a standard gyro and cockpit as well. One of the areas where the Summoner invests tonnage quite significantly, despite being an Omnimech, is in its heat sinks. It fills out its engine slots with 4 extra tons of clan double heat sinks, bringing its total to 28 cooling per turn. This is done under the assumption that it will be using its mobility in combination with some energy weapons or missiles that may generate more substantial amounts of heat. This is a very pragmatic use of this tonnage for the Summoner. As far as its electronics go, the Thor comes equipped with a model JD-067 communications package, as well as a Hawkeye 58 targeting and tracking system. Its communications system gives the Thor quite the perk, as it has the improved communications trait, and the fact it's been in service for so long and has received such extended support, it also has the ubiquitous trait as well. The former helps it in campaigns when dealing with ghost targets, the latter helps it with just campaigns. Either way, this is a reasonably good collection of bonuses when using the advanced rules. Mobility is life in Battletech, and different weight brackets bring different expectations. One of the biggest impacts the clans had on warfare when they entered the Inner Sphere was a consistent focus on providing higher speeds to their heavier mechs. Most clan heavies moved at the average speed of medium mechs in the Inner Sphere during the Succession Wars. The Summoner takes this a step further, at least amongst the common, first documented clan heavies during the invasion, by installing jump jets into the frame as well, leaning into this attribute even more, and much to the horror of the pilots who faced it down during Operation Revival. To achieve its mission goals, the Summoner comes equipped with an impressive 15-ton Redline 350 XL fusion engine, which grants it a maximum speed of 86 kilometers per hour, or 8 movement points in the tabletop game. For its jumping capabilities, it also comes installed with 5 JF standard jump jets, which gives it the ability to leap up to 150 meters, or 5 movement points in the tabletop game. Its movement on the ground is standard for an Omnimech of its weight, though exceptional by Inner Sphere standards. And yet better, its ability to jump makes it one of the deadlier clan heavies at the time of revival, especially when facing off against its more primitive competitors. Its fantastic ability to leap, however, was at the very least somewhat unique even among its clan tech peers, which often don't expend this level of tonnage into this attribute, at least at the time of its design and implementation. Maneuverability is key for the summoner. It's where the mech truly shines. The summoner finds itself in a strange place in terms of protection. On the one hand, its armored plating is somewhat lacking, though is capable of protecting the mech. However, compared to more well-protected heavies, it does seem to be lean in this respect. More than anything, however, the summoner proves just how powerful clan Omnimechs are in regards to defense when employing advanced ferrofibrous. With only 9.5 tons invested in its armored protection, the Thor has a respectable 182 points of armored plating. To put this in perspective, a Succession Wars Marauder with 11.5 tons of standard inner sphere plating has 184 points of protection, making it functionally the same. This means that the summoner has a deceptively low amount of tonnage invested, when in reality it is as protected as many inner sphere heavy mechs, especially around the time of the initial invasion. As the lethality of inner sphere weapons and designs improved, the summoner would face more obstacles in later eras. Its relatively light plating as compared to its clan counterparts as well can be a weakness, but it is still armored enough that it can participate in high-level engagements. It simply needs to be managed tactically to avoid unnecessary damage. The most frequent version of the summoner seen during the clan invasion, as well as the variant which was the preference for most of its pilots within the clans as a whole, is the Prime configuration. The Prime is an interesting platform and has virtues as well as drawbacks. This is due to the comparatively limited tonnage of the summoner's pod space. The build is typically used in the role of a mobile heavy sniper due to its weapons loadout and the chassis' other features. To start with, as its main cannon in the right arm, it has an extended range particle projection cannon, which can go a fantastic distance across the battlefield, and has the ability to penetrate a large volume of armor. As stated in many other videos as well, clan ERPPCs are head clippers, meaning that should it make contact with the cockpit of the enemy mech, it'll be a flash before the lights go out for that machine, unless it's a super heavy or is protected by blue shield, both technologies that appeared in the Dark Age, to be clear. Beyond this, the Prime can rely on an LB-10X autocannon in the left arm to provide scattershot damage, or solid slug damage depending on the ammunition chosen, but it must be picked before the battle due to the LB-10 only having 1 ton of ammunition. This also means that after 10 shots, the cannon will run dry. Finally, for another scatter attack at long range, the summoner can call on its left torso-mounted LRM-15, which has 16 rounds of fire. Compared to many of its peers, which don't jump, the summoner is undergunned, and unfortunately for the Prime, it does feel like it needs more ammunition for its autocannon, to either have switchable munition types, or to simply have enough shots for a meaningful deployment. Overall, the Prime, though it is superb in comparison to its inner sphere counterparts, and has its own role on the battlefield, does feel somewhat lackluster in some respects. However, if one exploits its mobility and firepower, it will still be successful very often on the battlefields of the 31st century. A radical departure from the Prime, A or B, the C configuration of the summoner is a brutal close-quarters combatant that seemingly gives no quarter to its rivals in hard-fought encounters in dense terrain. Its weapons configuration largely mirrors the Inner Sphere's VTR-9B Victor, and interestingly, the summoner moves faster and hits much harder than its Inner Sphere contemporary. using the Thor's speed and maneuverability, especially in spaces with dense terrain where its victims may not be able to navigate it quite so easily. The C configuration drops vicious bombs on its adversaries. To start with, it has an ER large laser for poking targets at long range and harassment, in order to not leave it totally helpless at long distances. Of course, it also pairs these up with some close range weaponry as well. The laser is found in the right arm, along with an ER small laser. The real star of the show, however, is its absolutely destructive Clan Ultra AC-20 autocannon, which does exactly what you might imagine, landing for an utterly destructive 40 points of damage under the right conditions. When this cannon sings, anyone with sense will tremble. It is a close-range weapon, but that doesn't really matter. It's meant to be, and works fantastically as designed with the C configuration. It does, however, only have 5 rounds of fire if rapid fire is engaged, before it runs dry. Finally, to back this up and exploit the enormous holes the AC-20 may rip in its opponents, the C has a Streak SRM-6 in the left torso. Overall, the C is devastating, but it does lack stamina. Sadly for its opposition, few have the endurance to survive many turns, being bombarded by its extremely powerful autocannon. A major series of refits appeared in terms of the pre-configuration variants of the Summoner during the last years of the Clan invasion, then the Fedcom Civil War era, and the Blakest era afterwards. Each of these tend to lean into new technologies in some way. The H configuration leans into heavy lasers, and to compensate for this, smartly, it has a targeting computer installed on board, reducing the negatives of these weapons to 0. To further defend itself as well, it does have an anti-missile system installed too, reducing enemy missiles' effectiveness. It also has 9 additional Clan double heat sinks on board to help manage the enormous heat it may generate. For weaponry, sadly, despite investing in this technology, it doesn't have an abundance of it. It has a pair of heavy large lasers, with 1 in each arm. Each shot from these weapons are devastating, of course, but it doesn't provide much forgiveness if the Thor misses. To back these up, it has twin ER medium lasers, which are also arm mounted. That's really all of it, actually. While these weapons are dangerous, it's just not very much. Sometimes that's enough, of course, but should it lose its arms, it will lose all of its weaponry, and the Summoner isn't supremely armored. The H, seemingly like many heavy laser designs, though certainly not all of them, seems to be a bit of a miss. Another post-initial invasion Summoner, the Summoner Q, is quite heavily gunned. It is a dangerous Summoner, taking full advantage of the tonnage it has available. To begin with its noteworthy features, it does install an additional double heatsink from the get-go. First, for its long-range direct fire, it smartly installs a right arm mounted Clan ER PPC, as well as a left arm mounted large pulse laser. This pair of ruthless long-range weapons can do devastating damage, especially with the extra heatsink, as it can jump and fire both without any major setbacks to its heat. But things get more dangerous when things get close, because anyone who gets the drop on this mech, or believes they have, are going to experience a very bad day. Should the fight come to short ranges, it can switch without any concern away from its arm-mounted weapon systems, and instead can fire its heavy-medium laser and small laser, mounted in the left and center torsos. But after that, it can also fire 6 SRM-4 launchers. Yes, that's right, it has 6 SRM-4 launchers, meaning that anyone who thought this would be easy to engage in close will be shotgunned by 24 short-range missiles, which not only does more than reasonable damage, but also crit seeks while they're at it. It is devastating, especially if the target is already softened up by the arm-mounted weapons on the way in. The Q is a fantastic update on the Summoner, but one which is extinct by the Ilclan era, with its last operators being Clan Wolf during the Dark Age. The Dark Age would see a handful of new configurations for the Summoner come into view. To name these variants, there was the functional upgrade of the original Prime, in the form of the T, as well as the AA, which appears to be an upgrade over the original A. and a new variant, the J configuration. The J does its best to try to make the Thor a mech which can truly land with the full force of a hammer. While there are some higher impact variants, landing devastating blows with one weapon like the C configuration, many tend to be built around more medium tier weapon systems. The J starts by having a light active probe and 2 right arm mounted improved heavy medium lasers. This actually makes up the majority of its systems, and the heavy medium lasers are there as a last line of offense and defense. The real star of the show for the J configuration is a Hell's Horse's favorite, though all factions do have access to this design and use it, which is a devastating and terrifying HAG-40. This enormous cannon, which has 12 rounds of fire, can shred even heavy mechs with a successful blow. It's one of the most feared weapon systems to have ever been injected into the setting, and to not respect it would be the height of foolishness. Is the J configuration perfect? By no means. If its weaponry is made inert by some means, or it's caught out of place, the J will succumb to enemy fire quickly. But its potential for battle-changing damage in a single turn of fire means many would be wise to at least consider it in their arsenals. In the Dark Age and Ilclan eras. The Summoner is considered one of the true greats amongst clan mechs, either rightly or wrongly. All the same, its combination of speed, agility, firepower, and defense was outstanding during Operation Revival. The largest thing that gets in the way of holding onto a true level of notoriety, outside of its media appearances of course, is that the Timberwolf, and perhaps the Mad Dog, are its stablemates. In the case of the former, due to the rivalry between Clan Jade Falcon and Clan Wolf, it leads to comparisons very frequently. The Jade Falcon's Thor fighting the Wolf's Mad Cat. There is an argument to be made that this is a true mismatch. Outside of being war machines, they possess entirely different approaches to both doctrine and battle. The Timberwolf is heavier and is built for direct confrontation with targets. The Summoner, on the other hand, is more maneuverable and is built around fighting in a style that embraces the environment as a result. The latter will always struggle when put into a direct shot-for-shot confrontation with the former, but that's not how it's meant to fight. War, however, is unforgiving, and while a direct comparison may not be fair, there appears to be more circumstances, for more commanders, where the Timberwolf ekes out this adversary. Much like in the literature, the representative of Clan Jade Falcon, sadly, will often end up in second place. Even more amusing though, there is perhaps an argument that the Smoke Jaguar's Mad Dog, another popular heavy from Technical Readout 3050, may also surpass the Summoner in the same ways as the Timberwolf, despite weighing 10 tons less. Does this mean that Jade Falcon's darling is actually in third? Well, that's for you to decide. Overall, the Summoner is, despite the competence of its cohorts, an exceptional design, and one which has a legacy that is still being felt in the setting and in the tabletop game, from the time of its introduction all the way through to this day, over 30 years later. Truly, it has struck the world of Battletech with the force of a thunderbolt, cast down by the god of thunder himself. You dare refuse my bachal? Thank you for joining me here today. You all know what I'm going to say next. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. I post content frequently and you'll be happy with it, I think. As always, a huge thank you to the YouTube members as well. As I always say, these videos would not be possible without viewers like you. And if you like what I do, don't forget there is always the option to hit the join button to further support this channel. Next will be the long format video covering the Executioner, which I hope people will really enjoy. A lot of work is going to be poured into it. And with that, I'll catch everyone in the comments section below.